I'm still on medical oxygen. I still need medical oxygen. I can't go up the stairs. I certainly cannot dance or sing. Not that you guys would want me to dance or sing, but my life has completely changed in a dramatic way. And I said, how do I move forward with this? Like, am I going to be the same again?
Hey everyone, welcome to DARPin Dialogue. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, it has certainly taken a toll on people's health. And one person whose story has garnered quite a bit of attention in the media is one of Atish Ram's. He contracted the virus in the springtime, and he is a well-known South Asian media personality. He's been good enough to join us virtually to share his story and his experience with COVID. Hi, Atish. How are you?
I'm getting better. Thanks for having me.
Good to hear. So tell me a little bit as to how you contracted the virus in the springtime.
The virus was actually new, so we're hearing about it. We didn't have any protocol set up, And I remember visiting my doctor as a follow-up, and he said, "Listen," he said, "this virus that we're getting from back east, it's going to be quite deadly, and it's we're going to shut our offices down, so just be careful." So I was being quite vigilant about it, and I was saying, okay, well, this is pretty serious, right? Mm-hmm. And I took one little trek to the grocery store to buy some groceries to have a meal for that night, and there was a lady behind me who was coughing, and she was joking about COVID-19 to these two other guys. And I was kind of, this time nobody's wearing masks, there was no glass partitions, nothing was in place, right? And that's the only place I went. And next thing you know, a week later, about 10 days later, I started complaining to my wife about her cooking. The taste buds were going. The smell was not there. I couldn't smell anything. And then within 10 days, I started getting a fever. And I had a fever for 4 days. After 4 days, I kept calling my doctor, and he goes, "I'll just take Tylenol." And then finally, I went into Royal Columbian Hospital, and I said, "Look, I'm not feeling good." They did a chest X-ray. They said, "Well, since you're here, we have to do a COVID test because that's what we're doing for anybody that comes in an emergency." They did a COVID test. They did an X-ray on my lungs, and they said, "Well, you got a little bit of pneumonia." They gave me antibiotics and sent me home. And I was home, and basically 2 days later, I got a call from Fraser Health, and they said, basically, you've contracted COVID-19. Stay isolated. Make sure your family stays isolated. 2 days after that, I could barely move. I could barely get up to go to the bathroom. And then my daughter kind of panicked, and she called Fraser Health, and they talked to me on the phone. And I couldn't even speak like 5 words. And she goes, "Listen, you got to go to the hospital." Right. Immediately, I went to Royal Columbian Hospital, and I was admitted. And then that started my 2-month journey. I didn't think I was going to be there that long, but the complications that I had from the time that I got there to the time that I left and till now, it's a pretty serious. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
What was your reaction and your family's reaction once they found out that you've tested positive for the virus?
It was shocking. I was numb. I just couldn't believe that I got this virus. But then I didn't think, okay, well, if that's fine, 14 days, I'll be fine. But boy, was I wrong. Yeah. I mean, I nearly died. I was with my family, and they had mild symptoms. Right. And my wife had a fever. My son had a fever a little bit for a couple of days, but nothing as drastic as me. I also, my son and my daughter, my other son and my daughter, never had any symptoms, but they were around me and they did have the virus. Some people get the virus, and it depends on their blood type and their DNA, that can have severe consequences. Some people don't have anything, but they can all carry the virus. You may not even have any symptoms. You may not even think that you have the virus, but you can go to your grandparents or somebody who's got an underlying health condition and give it to them, and it could have a deadly consequence. This is how the virus is spreading so fast, right? So that's just something that I really, really want to emphasize. What I learned is the virus, it's a respiratory illness. So it attacks your respiratory system. It really did a number on my lungs. I had pneumonia in both my lungs. I went into the hospital. The tricky part of this virus is I went to the hospital, I got into a regular COVID ward, then I deteriorated really fast. My vitals just went down. my oxygen saturation went down. They rushed me to ICU. I was in ICU for 5 days. And then I stabilized and I came back up to COVID ward and I was fine for about 5 days. And then all of a sudden it attacked me again. And it attacked me so hard and that both my lungs were filled with pneumonia. I was drowning in my own fluids. It was so bad that when they rushed me back to the ICU, they basically said to me, listen, you are not doing very well. They held my hand, the nurse held my hand, and he basically said, listen, you need to call your family and you need to tell them what you need to say. We're going to intubate you and you may not come out of this. You have a 10% chance. You may not even make it through the night. So they were very compassionate about it. And they were, and I laid there for 5 hours thinking, what am I going to tell my family?
Right.
This is it for me, you know? And I laid there. It took me about 3 hours to sink that in. And then I finally texted my wife and I basically said to her, I said, I got some pretty bad news and I need to FaceTime you guys. And then that night at 10 o'clock, I FaceTimed them. They gave me a little bit of medication to sedate me a bit. So I was able to talk for maybe 10 minutes, barely, because I was hooked up to all the machines and everything, right? And basically I just said goodbye to them and I told them how proud I was and you know, my daughter wouldn't have it. She was very resilient and she basically said to me, you know, no dad, you know, you are going to be here. This is not your goodbye. You're a fighter, you know, you get back here and you watch me graduate university and you'd walk me down that aisle when I get married. And she was the kind of the motivating factor. In my heart, I kind of felt this is it. And I went to sleep and, but the first time I slept and I thought I was gone. What happened after that was basically the virus starts to spread from your lungs and it started to attack my heart. So I started having heart failure. Right? So they was trying to control my heart. And then it starts to attack your liver, starts to attack your kidneys. So there was no medication for this virus. There was no medication to help control the virus. All they were doing was giving me medication and antibiotics to control the other organs. Wow. And then further down the line, I started getting internal bleeding and I was, you know, facing irregular heartbeat, heart palpitations. I was on nitro patches just to keep my blood vessels, you know, and then blood thinners. They were injecting me with blood thinners in the morning at nighttime to keep from the blood clotting. And then that was my 10 days of ICU. And it was like just one complication and another after another. Right. Yeah, I didn't even get out of bed for 5 weeks. Wow. And when I did get out of bed, I couldn't even walk. I had to learn how to walk. I took 2-3 steps. That's it. I go, oh my God, this is it. And I lost 40 pounds. It was torture. I didn't know what my last day was going to be. So I figured, you know, I unlocked my phone and I started taking pictures each day of me. And I figured if this was my last day, my family would see my last picture. You know, I didn't tell anybody when I was in the hospital because I didn't want my mom to find out. So I kind of kept it, you know, a secret with my family, my sisters, my brother. And I said, I don't want my mom to find out because she worried like crazy. And what happened was after I was there for 8 weeks, like my 8th week, I felt so much guilt that I needed to call my mom. And I did call her and I told her, and she was pretty mad at me for not letting her know. Right. But then miraculously that week I ended up getting 3 COVID negative tests when I was able to go home.
Hi. I missed this. How are you?
Good. But I wasn't well because I was weak. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to have oxygen constantly, but I was going home. And then I started reviewing those pictures and I realized the horror that I had gone through. And I said, I need to tell people about this because this is really, really deadly. And then that's when I did my whole interview with CBC and everything.
It sounds like exactly what you said earlier. You don't wish this upon anyone else. How are you doing now? How is life since that post-COVID experience?
I'm still on medical oxygen. I still need medical oxygen. I can't go up the stairs. I certainly cannot dance or sing. Not that you guys would want me to dance or sing, but my life is completely changed in a dramatic way. And I said, you know, how do I move forward with this? Like, am I going to be the same again?
It's up there.
It
is up there.
My last x-ray showed, CT scan showed that I have scarring in my lung tissues. I have fibrosis in my lungs. I have pain shooting down my legs because I cough so much that I pull my discs in the back, my L4, L5 discs. I have memory loss, short-term memory loss, brain fog. I, blurred vision on my right eye. I got ringing in my ears. And these are all these complications that kind of is being discovered by all these long haulers. There's so much unknown about this virus. Just because you contracted and then you're recovered from it doesn't mean that you're still safe, because they don't know much about what the long-term effects on the virus is. Like when I came out of the hospital, they said, listen, we don't know much about this virus. Right. You may get it again, right? They could be a mutated version, and you may not be so lucky next time around. When I go out anywhere, and I rarely go out, is basically wear gloves, wear masks, wear eye shields, because the virus can also penetrate through your eyes.
Right.
If somebody sneezes, those particles can go through your eyes and you can get infected that way as well. We had that 14-day incubation period, but the virus, for me, it was in my body for 75 days. I had 15 COVID tests while I was in the hospital. Wow. And after 15 tests, that's when I was free of the virus.
What message do you have for the South Asian community and the community at large?
You know what? I've been saying this all along. That time when I got the virus, there was no protocol set up, right? Now we have everything. The education is there. The, wearing masks is mandatory, keeping social distance, keeping within your own bubble. All these things are put in place for a reason, because it'll flatten the curve of the virus. The virus can only spread from human to human. 1 in 4 people that are walking around right now have the virus. So if you go into a shopping mall, or if you go anywhere in public, just look around you. Just remember, 1 in 4 person is carrying the virus. And if you're not careful, if you're not protecting yourself by wearing a mask, by sanitizing your hands, keeping your hands safe, washing your hands, we can beat this thing. Right. Our numbers are just. I was afraid of this. When I left the hospital, the doctors told me, they said, listen, Mr. Ram, make sure when the flu season comes out, make sure you get vaccinated, and make sure your family gets vaccinated, because this virus thrives in the cold. And in the fall, we're going to see a huge second wave. That's what they predicted back in May. So we have to be more vigilant now than ever. Ultimately, my message to the community is, what? Yeah, we may have a pretty dull Christmas, but your health is more important. Let's just hunker down, protect one another, protect our loved ones, and just be safe. And we'll get through this. But it's we've seen the light at the end of the tunnel. We're gonna get through this, but we just all have to do our part and just be safe and protect our family. Stay within your bubble. Wash your hands. Don't go out where you don't need to go out, and we'll get through it.
That's a wonderful, wonderful message. You summed it up very beautifully. Follow the protocol. It's in place for a reason, and make sure you do your part. Atish, we wish you all the best for your health, and take care, and thanks for taking the time.
And thank you for allowing me for this platform to get the message across. Thank you so much.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe.